Uh,
Maybe make this into part two,
you
or
know,
break
well,
break it into two.
that's a good idea. Well, that might be a good idea because I was gonna ask you, and we could start with this. I'm curious about how that situation went and how that went with the second group that seemed to be trying to stake their territory and tell them not to even come outside or whatever. And I'd like to know how that went, and then also
Okay.
kind of what you would recommend for people who are having a situation on their property. And I'm guessing that you've had some involvement with some of these situations, and it sounds like
Hmm.
they went to a peaceful outcome, which
Hmm.
I've heard of in the past. And just, I was also just tying it together. Is there's the family, and then is that woman down the same street? Like, are they close by?
No, no,
Okay.
they're 40 miles apart.
Oh wow. So still
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. With the first site, I call it the Napa Vine site because it's somewhat near that town as a point of reference for people that live around here. I never give away the location, and I generally I will keep the identity of witnesses confidential too, just to preserve their privacy because there are trolls out there who will try to figure out who it was and where they were, and then they cause those people problems. So that's just, school of hard knocks. That's just the way I roll with it. So when the at the Napa Vine site, the site that had the blonde female and the gray male and the three little ones, one born in the pool, that site, um, it was really odd because it was like the fall of 2019, and the little woman who lives there was really in tune with them, and she told me that the female said to her, "We're going to be leaving now. Something bad is coming."
Oh wow.
Um,
Wow.
so they left. They disappeared, and other ones came in. The one in particular that they saw was uh, a quite large female. She had her body hair was red and the hair on her head was black, but she had twins. And the woman that lived there was able to observe that female nursing the twins, um, and tending to them. And they were, like almost newborns, but they were still scampering around. She wouldn't let them out of arm's reach though. But she got to watch them for about an hour until the neighbors next door came out of their house. And when that happened, then she got up and she just walked away. But any time that they would go out of their house with these new ones, the Bigfoots would act out, and it wasn't in a nice way. It was yelling and screaming and maybe throwing things, sticks and that kind of thing. It's more like, scream and you try to get them to go back in their house or go away. They had enough experience that they knew, be nice, but stand your ground and go, no, I've got things. I've got to mow these trails. I've got to take care of this pasture. I've got chores to do, and I'm going to keep doing it. And pretty soon it was like, okay, yeah, we get it. And, but they never did, they never connected in the way that they did with the other people. And then gradually that group left. And as far as I know, none have come back since then. We thought that the first group would come back, but just haven't seen them. There's been a number of other ones. One place over by Mount Rainier, the guy is retired Navy SEAL officer, tough dude, nice guy, really nice. Built a big cabin over there, and the Bigfoots would come down out of the woods behind their place. There's nothing for 40 miles. It's just woods, And he is actually the designated caretaker of 100 acres of land that belongs to a nature conservancy. But they would have routine, very often sightings. Once when we were there, my wife actually saw one walk through the woods between their house and the neighbor's house. They would note when the Sasquatches, and there would be, like a half a dozen of them together, would be like trying to herd the elk around and maybe catch one. One night they came home from town, they'd been shopping, and it was like it's like an hour and a half from Costco in Tacoma out to this place. And so they wouldn't get home till 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they'd drive behind their house where they would park their car and then unload their groceries so they're getting groceries out of the trunk. And they had two cats, and one of the cats is acting really weird. And, so the guy's going, what's going on with you? And he's petting the cat. And then his wife says, look up to your left up by the woods. And when he looked up there was these two great big eyes standing up there at the wood line. And then the eyes ducked down. And then the next thing he sees is these red eyes coming right at him. And he goes, what's going on? And well, what had happened was the Bigfoot had been holding the cat and petting the cat. And when they came home, he put the cat down and, kind of pushed it off, go home, and then turned and walked into the woods.
Wow.
They got to kind of know each other okay. That's where I had a mental slideshow. I went up there with a couple other people. We pitched a tent in the backyard, which is right up against the woods. And middle of the night, I woke up, and it's like when they're there, you just know they're there. And I woke up and I went, oh, they're right outside the tent. And so I, tried to wake up the person next to me. Hey, they're here. And neither one of the other two people would wake up. And so I just laid back. My air mattress was losing air, so I had a rock stuck in my back. So I wasn't sleeping really well.
I know that feeling.
So I was laying there awake, and I was just going, okay, I'm just going to lay here and just see what they do. And I'm awake, and all of a sudden, and it's dark, and all of a sudden this image shows up in front of me of one of their faces. And then it kind of faded to nothing. And then another image, real clear, shows up. And they showed me 6 different faces. And
Wow.
I think what they were doing was saying, this is who we are, and we're going to judge your reaction to us. And it was like, cool, thank you for showing me that. And when I said that, then I rolled over and went back to sleep.
Wow.
I was able to sleep. So I guess they were cool with it. He would do fun things like make a big pile of rocks, and then, put fruit and stuff, hang it off the rocks and stuff. And they would come in and they'd go, oh, well, you made that pile of rocks. We're going to one up you, and we're going to make another pile of rocks that's even more complicated than the pile of rocks you made. He found out firsthand, don't give him garbage food. Don't leave if you're going to leave him like a cantaloupe, don't leave them the rinds of the cantaloupe that they have to get the what's left off. Leave them the whole piece, because they will just throw the rinds away. Leave them real food. And they would take bananas, like what you had happen, but it was fun. It was a fun interaction. Wife and I went there one night. We slept in a screen tent, so it was all open because we wanted to be able to see what was going on outside. And we had taken made a platter of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he had this great big wood pile there, and we had stuck one piece of wood up in the middle of it and set the sandwiches on top. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and I see, now, this is kind of one of those woo things. I see this little pinpoint of white light, and it looked like a LED right over there by the sandwiches. And I'd had enough experience to know, okay, well, that's probably them. And I, I watched it for a while, and it was doing something over there. And then I drifted back off asleep. Next morning, get up, and some of the sandwiches were gone, but what had happened is they'd taken the sandwiches off one side, made it heavy, and it tilted and threw the rest of the sandwiches onto the wood. So they didn't eat those because they had now been on the ground. The guy would talk about, he always has some kind of project going. He built this really cool underground cellar with a bar in it. He made a great big stone, a masonry pizza oven out there. He was just always doing these kind of projects. And so we always had building supplies, PVC pipe, wood, all kinds of stuff. And he always kept it very nice and neat because he's a military guy. He had it all nice and neat, everything in its place. And he'd get up in the morning and it'd be scattered all over the yard. And I'd get an email, them damn Sasquatch kids have been playing in my yard again. Because they come in, they'll play with everything, and not put anything back.
That's amazing. It's like you have a number of situations that have a similar disposition going on.
But they do that everywhere.
Wow.
And if you approach them the same way, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, Kentucky, Georgia, anywhere, Ohio, if you approach it the same way, you're going to get the same kind of results in general.
Wow.
And you're going to learn the same things. You're going to you'll eventually learn about eye glow, mind speak, cloaking, mental slideshows, all that stuff people call paranormal. And, and there are people that say that can't exist. That's impossible. They just don't do that. I'm not going to go there. Well, okay, that's fine. That's where you stop. You just don't go any further. But if you keep doing this long enough, you're going to run into that stuff and you have to deal with it. Now, you can either put it out of your mind and pretend it didn't happen, or you can embrace it and go, I want to learn more about this. Show me more. And they'll do stuff like that. You might get to see the orbs. You might get to see the little blue lights that go floating through your tent, in one side and out the other without leaving a hole,
Wow.
Weird stuff like that. It happens out there. I've been on 56 expeditions. Probably about 30 of them were official BFRO expeditions. The balance is just, groups of people getting together, Bigfooters getting together and staying out there for 3 or 4 days. Not anything that the public is invited to or anything like that. But you run into the same stuff. You're going to run into this stuff. Things are going to happen. Maybe not every time, but often. If you go out there, like last summer, we had a fun expedition down by Mount Adams. And the expeditions are Thursday through Sunday. People arrive on Thursday, leave on Sunday. But we are there from like Monday or Tuesday. There's always somebody there like Monday, setting up, getting things ready, digging the holes for the latrine, all of that kind of stuff. Well, what I do is I'll go out there in the woods by myself and I'll just have a conversation with them. And I'll just talk to them. I'll say who I am, tell them we're just coming to visit. We'd appreciate it if they want, if they felt like it, come in and say hello and just make them feel welcome. And then we present a camp scene that shows that it's not a threat. It's not a bunch of guys in Hunter Orange shooting their guns in the gravel pit. And I'm a hunter, so I'm not putting any hunters down by that. But, when it's a group of hunters, they're going to stay away. Well, they know what Hunter Orange means, and they know when you got a gun, they know what that means. But if you're not doing any of that stuff and you're having a good time, people are laughing, they're telling stories, they're singing songs, they're just having a good time, not being a threat, not being obnoxious. They're curious, so they want to come in, they want to see what's going on. This last summer, we tried something new. One of the guys brought a thermal drone, and he's flying that drone around. He's learning how to use it at the same time. He's flying that drone around, watching the people that are doing their night walks, and He sees two Bigfoots walk out of the woods into a clearing. And so he starts to record. He should have been recording the whole time, but he clicked
Mm.
record, and we got a video of an adult. I think it's a female. I think she's holding a baby by the way her arms are.
Wow.
And there's a juvenile with her. And when you see the video of it, they're just standing there looking up at the drone. You can see her move her arms, and that's about all you can see. And that's the kind of thing, the trolls come out and say, well, how do you know that isn't a such and such, a bear or something like that? Well, the guy saw it walk out of the woods on two legs. So I go up to the same exact spot the next day. I found the exact spot. And he flies the drone over at exactly the same altitude because that was programmed in from his 000 point, the piece of plywood where he would launch it from. It would only go up 482 feet. It was programmed that way. It would go no higher. And so it would go up. He flew it over. He took video of me. He had me walk back and forth a couple of different directions. And then we took and compared the video of it and the video of me from the same, basically look down, and we're able to compare the sizes. Well, that juvenile was a bit bigger than me. And the mama was just absolutely huge. But they were coming to our camp. So when you have an adult female with an infant and a juvenile in tow, and they're coming to your camp, that says to me they're comfortable with the group of people that are there, and they're just curious. They want to come and see what's going on. And that's what we try to get them to do. And by priming it, by going out and just introducing myself, explaining what we're doing there, who we are, and what we want to do, they somehow get the message, and it seems to work.
And I would imagine when you, I was, did you involve speaking to them when that second group came into that family's property that was making them a little
No,
tense? Okay.
no.
Did you give them any suggestions on maybe
Oh,
them to speak to them
oh,
or
they knew.
oh,
She
they
knew
knew
already because she had already been talking to the female,
the
yeah,
new group?
of the old group. So she knew you could talk to them,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
she went
Right.
out and she tried that. That may be part of the reason things settled down. It's fun. We went there to visit once, and we stopped and got a pizza in town and brought it to them. We said, don't fix dinner. We're bringing pizza. So we brought a pizza and we put it in the oven when we got there and cooked it. Then we went out on their back deck, and they had a picnic table there with an umbrella over the top for shade. And so we're sitting there eating the pizza, and this Bigfoot from about is maybe 50 yards away, she, I think female, beautiful trilling whistle. It was just beautiful. I can't reproduce it. But let us know, hey, we're over here. We'd like some pizza too. So we didn't eat all the pizza. We kept about half of it, and we put it on the pizza tray and took it out there. And there was a particular stump where we would put food, and they did take that pizza. Next morning, it was all gone. And
Wow.
you can tell. People say, how do you know that wasn't a bear or a raccoon? So I have a good friend who was giving, feeding or giving gifts to the Bigfoots around his place. And he says, this is how you know the difference. And he showed a picture of when the raccoons had been in it compared to when the Bigfoots had been in it. And when the raccoons had been in it, it's a mess. There are things everywhere, eggshells everywhere, just you can tell an animal was in there. But when the Bigfoots are in there, they're nice and neat and tidy. And they won't take it all, and they might pick something up and they'll put it exactly down where they got it, if they don't want it. It's a striking difference between animals and Bigfoots when they take the food that you offer them, if they take the food.
I can actually confirm two of those things you just said from my experience,
Mm-hmm.
where they would, when I was gifting for a while, they would always leave a little bit, And
Hmm.
I'll never forget this one time where I brought out these like granola bar things.
Hmm.
They were like almond flavor, and they had that little bit of frosting down one side, you know, like the
Hmm.
Nature Valley or whatever.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking, shoot, because there's 8 in the box, I think. I meant to keep 2 for myself. Oh well. And when I went back, there was just 2 of those sitting right there. And I was like,
Yeah.
and the other one that you made me think of was there's a few times where I heard a lot of commotion on the picnic table at camp, to the point where I didn't really think it was a raccoon because it just kept going on. Like the percolator would get picked up
Hmm.
and just this banging.
Hmm.
One time inside the percolator, it looked like fingers went into the coffee.
Hmm.
But what was really interesting was it was almost completely in perfect order the way I left it, and you would
Yeah.
swear that it was going to be like on the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah. 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 Ron Moorhead talks about that out at their Sierra camp. It would sound like something was just tearing their camp to pieces, and they'd get up in the next morning and everything would be just like it was. Um, we were out on an expedition up North Olympics, and I had set up my camp a distance away from everybody else in a place where I could be a radio relay between other groups and our main base camp. And so we were isolated. And I had a table set up with all my, my stove and my utensils and all that stuff. And I put out a recorder and I let it go all night. In the middle of the night, when I listened to it, and in the middle of the night, something was in there banging things around, just like you just described. And when you look at it, it's like nothing was touched. They pick something up, they might clang it around, and they put it right back exactly where it was. You
Yeah,
know,
I recorded it too, and I it woke me up, but I also recorded it, and I always have a piece of foil around my percolator to just block the wind to help it
uh huh,
not waste too much propane. And I would have sworn that thing was going to be shredded, like the tinfoil, because it made so
uh
much
huh,
noise. That's what
mm-hmm.
woke me up. And the percolator just came off the table a number of times. And I'm thinking if it was a raccoon, it might have hit the table once when it knocked it over, and that's probably about it. And it was still upright, and so
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see how they do the same things no matter
Yeah,
where you're at in the country.
yeah,
And I suppose if you went over to Russia, and to the Urals or someplace where they got them there too, the Almasty they call them,
yeah.
they do the same things.
When you were doing, by the way, I did peanut butter and jelly.
Hmm.
I put them in individual plastic bags,
Okay.
and what I came to realize is it's like they had a razor on them. Uh, the plastic bag, there was one that was just ripped out the bottom of it.
Uh huh.
It's hard to really say what that was, but it kind
Yeah.
of it almost seemed like it wasn't quite ripped enough to have been just a little mouth. It was almost like somebody just ripped a corner and pulled it out. But on another one, it
Mm-hmm.
was literally sliced right across the bag, just
Hmm.
like somebody had a razor.
Isn't
And
that something?
one other thing that was a repeating thing I mentioned to you earlier, the little Chiquita sticker, whatever, on the banana, it would be ripped off and it would be just around perfectly like a little bit of the peel. Like it
Uh-huh.
didn't actually peel the sticker off, it just ripped that part of the skin off.
Mm-hmm.
But also with these little miniature treat boxes, I would put there would be the little expiration sticker on them, like a
Mm-hmm.
little, and they
Mm-hmm.
would rip right around the plastic. A very high percentage of the time, they would just rip around that and just put that to the side. And
Yeah. Huh.
that always had me wonder because the person who kind of mentored me said they would rip, the sticker off, and it was almost like, is that a signal? Are they letting me know that it's them? Because
Who knows? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so cool.
Maybe they know that's something I don't want to eat.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that could be. I never thought to look for something like that.
And I made a thing out of it, and it seems like they can hear us. And I'd be
Mm-hmm.
excited, like when the receipt was separate, I'd be like, I can't even rip it this way. And you just wonder, like, is there any way did they do that? Because because I acknowledged it. I don't know, but it was
Oh, they're very talented. You know, it's like, how does something with a hand that's as big as a dinner plate, you know, with a thumb that's like an inch and a half wide, wrap up little mice in grass so delicately and tie a little bow tie knot in it?
right,
How do they do that? You know.
right.
Oh, and then talk about other weird stuff.
Bring it on. Like the
Friend of
weird stuff.
mine, and this happened more than once. I heard more than one report about this, but this is a firsthand report. Drove to a place where we've had a number of expeditions, but it was winter time, so there was, you know, nobody around, and parked the car, locked it up, just went on a hike down the road, went a mile, turned around, hiked back, you know, nothing going on. Opens a car door, had to unlock the car, opens a car door, and here's a little rock on the passenger seat that wasn't there.
I've heard that exact same thing with a feather
Yeah. Yeah.
inside of a
Feathers.
lock
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
locked car and inside of a locked house,
Yeah.
which is pretty
How
wild.
do they do that? But they do it.
Yeah,
Something does it.
it's repeatable, that's for sure. Whatever you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, you know, other things, people I know who were, you know, sleeping in their tent, and, you know, they'll be asleep and one will come up under the tent, you know, and just kind of cup the back of their head, but somehow they get the fingers are coming around, you know, fingers over, you know, and they kind of just hold their head up, you know, for a little while, and then they'll let it down. Another time, I know of a person who was awake and they watched a finger push in the fabric of the tent, and it would go
Mm,
out, and then they push in again, and he reached up and grabbed it and just
no
held
way.
on. And then it let it, you know, nobody panicked or nothing, and then it just, you know, pulled its finger out. Fun stuff, you know,
Wow.
to get to have that kind of an interaction with them. You know, I've always wanted them to, you know, come up and sit down across the campfire and have a conversation.
You
Maybe
know,
someday.
that reminds me of a point that I've heard you make in another interview, at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this is interesting to me because of all the intel that you're privy to through the BFRO and everything else that entails. And you mentioned how you moved to a place where they are, and you also said, "I don't want to live somewhere where they're not."
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting to me. You know the sentiment of a lot of people out there of fear. They might
Mm-hmm.
abduct you and
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. And I'm not really
Yeah.
judging the people for thinking that. It's understandable, but that's really fascinating to me how you'd come up with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It was just a feeling after I had my first encounter. It was like, why is there this longing to be close to them now, to find out more about them? Was that first encounter something where they broke the ice to say, hey, we want to teach you? I don't know, you know, just guessing. But there was a connection that was made, and it's like once you have a close-up interaction with one, you're part of their clan or they're part of their kind. They connect in. Um, I've got other friends who have discovered that they're a connected race. They're what one knows, they all know. If they know you in the place where you live, if you go somewhere else, the ones that are there will know who you are. Um,
I've heard that.
it just seems that way. Um, I had one witness who had them coming onto his property a lot. They took any one of his turkeys that would sit too close to the fence, you know, would get taken and eaten. But it was a lot of interaction on his property, and he was saying, you know, I am so sick of this. I think I'm going to move. And I said, well, yeah, you can move 150 miles away, but once you get moved in, they'll be waiting for you. Now they know where you're going to go, and or they know where you went, and they'll be there. It's just kind of spooky that way. Tom Powell talks about the coconut telegraph, and he lives down in south of Portland, and he was investigating a site on the Washington side of the Columbia River. And I think it was probably, I don't know, 75 miles as a crow flies. And he was at that. The site was a habituation type site, so he was up there quite often. But he wasn't getting anywhere with anything. He'd put out trail cameras and all that. Well, those don't work, but because they probably see the IR lights on them. But he just flippantly said, "Can you just throw me a bone?" Meaning give me something, right? He goes home and there's a bone on his
No
property. I
way.
mean, I forgot the
No
exact place
way.
where it was, but there was suddenly a bone there.
Wow.
And he goes, "This is a weird looking bone." And being a science teacher, he's like, "I want to find out what kind of bone this is." And so he started doing research, and he found out that it was the breastbone off an emu.
Whoa.
Well, emus are not native to Oregon and Washington. But he did find out that a mile up the road from the site he'd been working was an emu farm.
Uh-oh.
But
Wow.
how did it get the bone from there to his place before he got home?
Wow.
Odd stuff, really weird stuff. But it's fun. That's fun stuff.